Hello, my name is Ray. This is a follow-up to our seed starting video in Zone 6A. Um, as I said in the other video, we start our seeds really early because of the grow room that we have here. So now I'm going to be transplanting some of the seedlings that have grown into larger pots since it's time for that. It's been about 3 weeks since we shot the last video, so all the seedlings you'll see today are about 3 weeks old. Some are going to be larger than others. It all depends on the plant. So this is our tray of seedlings that we started about 3 weeks ago. We have tomato seedlings. These are full grown normal size tomatoes. These ones over here are a dwarf variety. They don't get more than like a foot tall. And then we have some cucumbers we'll be transplanting today and some peas. This here is some sorrel that we're probably gonna leave and let it get a little bit bigger. Some peppers and some eggplants as well that we'll leave in this tray to get a little bit bigger. So I'm gonna start with the cucumbers. As I said in the other video, the cucumbers we're going to try to grow inside. So these are not going to go outside unless it just so happens that they're still growing by the time they would go outside, which is about mid to late May. But more than likely they'll just stay inside. Hopefully we'll be able to pollinate them inside and grow them on and actually get some fruit. So the first thing I like to do whenever transplanting seedlings, I like to get some soil in the pot because you don't want to be putting the roots right at the bottom of the pot. So I'll start with this cucumber seedling right here. I like to squeeze this seedling tray to loosen up the roots. And then pop it out. This seedling could probably have been transplanted a little sooner, but it's not too bad. One of the key things is you don't want a ton of your roots on the outside here, otherwise it becomes root bound. At least you can see some soil here. So there's some soil you can see through the roots, so it's not super root bound, and as you can see, some of the roots are just falling apart just by me handling it, so it's not too bad. So, oops, let me pop that back in there. So I put a little bit too much soil in there, so when I put it in, the level of the soil I'd want in the pot was a little higher when I set the seedling down, so I'm just gonna make a little well in the pot to set the seedling in. Place it in the pot, and then put some soil around it. It's okay if you bury a bit of the stem right underneath the seed leaves, because most seedlings will grow some roots underneath their seed leaves, which are these. So the seed leaves are the leaves that come out of the seed first. Those are actually folded within the seed, so they're not the true leaves. This right here is the true leaf of a cucumber plant. These two rounder leaves are the seed leaves. So typically you don't usually transplant anything unless it has at least 1 to 2 of its true leaves. You can transplant it sooner, but it's just a rule of thumb that most people take is to wait until they have at least 1 to 2 true leaves to transplant. And give it a little pat down, and then I'll water it in after I finish all of them. So this cucumber is probably about perfect for transplanting. As you can see, it's not root bound in any way. And I don't know if you can see here, but on the stem of it, if you can see these little white like nubs, those are the start of more roots. So as you can see on the stem, if you bury it upwards to the seed leaves, then you can get more roots coming out of the stem and making your plant stronger. And then we'll move on to some of the tomatoes. So these ones are a yellow pear tomato, one of which has a really long root. So when these came up, I actually, if more than one came up in the pod, I actually snipped the other one off. I don't know if you can see here the tip of it where I snapped off the seed leaves so it stopped growing and you only had one per cell. So again, these ones are full-size tomatoes. I'm going to, well, since I only made one label of these, I'm going to try to plant each variety of tomato in similar pots so that I can stick one label in the pot and then know which one is the same type. So again, these will go very similar to the cucumbers. However, once I get to actually putting them into the pots, they'll be a bit different. Actually, I'm going to use a little bit deeper pots for a reason I'll explain in a second. So one of the interesting things about tomatoes is that they're actually a vine. And one thing about vines, anywhere that vine touches soil, it'll put out roots. So if you don't cage your tomatoes, when the tomato goes down and hits the soil, it will put out roots and create a more extensive root system. So one of the things I like to do when I transplant tomatoes is plant them deeper into the soil, because for instance, in the cucumber, it was just up to the seed leaves where the cucumber would put out new roots. However, for a tomato, anywhere the stem, even above the seed leaves, comes in contact with soil, it will put out more roots. So I'm actually going to take off the seed leaves of the tomato because I'm going to bury this seedling up past it to this first true leaf. And I took off the seed leaves because they will just rot in the soil and can actually create an open wound and cause basically the plant to rot. So I'm going to stick this plant nice and deep in the pot so that most of the stem is going to be under soil, and then fill it up. And then as you can see, you know, the soil level is kind of just below this first true leaf. So all the rest of the stem that's in the pot should produce some roots and make the plant even stronger. And then I'll just do the other one. And if you have a really tall pot and your plant isn't very tall yet, you can actually plant it deep within the pot, leave some room, and then as the plant grows, take off the leaves and put more soil in the pot to then increase the root mass. So if you're having a hard time with a seedling, sometimes it's good to use a pen or a popsicle stick, whatever you have, to get underneath it and get those roots, because one of the things you don't want to do is damage the stem of your seedling, because once you do that, the stem is what transmits all the water and nutrients to the plant. So if your stem gets damaged, then your seedling is going to die. So one of the reasons why I tap the sides of the pot is just to get dirt around all the roots without stressing the stem of the plant too much, because I don't want to, again, break that stem and cut off the flow of nutrients to the plant. So that's the yellow pear tomato. Then I'll move on to, I don't remember, German. I got the label as German, but I don't remember if it's German. I think it was German lunchbox tomato. I think. So this tomato is kind of shorter, so I'm not going to actually take off the seed leaves. I'm going to leave those on and just bury the stem up to those seed leaves. Alright, and then I've got to do a maroon cherry tomato. I call it a maroon, but I have no idea. It was one that came in a packet of, it said rainbow tomatoes, and it has fruit that I think looks maroon. But they're a cherry sized tomato. I'm just trying to find a pot that looks different, but I don't have one. I'm just going to grab a Sharpie so that I can mark this. That's another thing you can do is once you get up to these sizes, if you want to use like some blue painter's tape, and just put a piece of tape on it, and then you can just have it on the pot rather than sticks that can easily get lost. So actually in this pot, I planted some cinnamon basil plants, and this is definitely a basil seedling. I think it's a cinnamon basil seedling. I'm probably just gonna get rid of it, but a lot of the times my seeds, because I recycle soil, a lot of the times I have seeds of plants that I didn't plant in the pot come up. Typically I usually know what they are just because of how many seeds I've planted, and I know kind of what most seedlings look like, but yeah, so that was a case of that. So ideally I'd like to have these pots a little bit deeper, but I don't really have ones that are deeper but not too big that I would be potting it into something that's got a huge amount of soil. And one of the reasons I don't like potting something in a pot that's got a huge amount of soil for the size of the plant is because it takes that soil a lot longer to dry out, and that can cause waterlog and actually cause the roots to rot and then the plant to die that way. So I try to pot them up into a size that is kind of more of a relative size for the plant than going too massive, and I don't want to waste all that soil either. And these are only the first transplant anyways. I'll more than likely have to transplant these one, maybe two other times before these go outside. And that's all the normal tomatoes transplanted. Then we're gonna move on to the peas. Since I only have one variety of pea that I'm growing, obviously don't need to label them. But the process is pretty much the same. So I only had actually two peas germinate. I planted 8 seeds, but these seeds are over a year old, so some certain seeds are better at storing than others. Tomatoes and peppers tend to be a little bit better. They can keep 2 to 3 years with decent germination, but apparently this is the first time I've kept peas for over the year. Typically I plant them all at once, but I kept these for a year and I've got 2 out of 8 that actually germinated, so not really good germination. So I think next time I'm probably just gonna have to buy fresh seed in order to grow this variety of pea again. One of the telltale signs that your seedlings really need to be transplanted is actually something this seedling is doing right now, and you can see its bottom leaves are starting to yellow, and that's because it needs more nutrients than what it's got in the little seed pod. So this is probably the perfect time to transplant. And this one, even though it is the dwarf variety and I will be keeping this inside all the time, I will probably need to transplant this up one more time before it's finished growing. And then, last but not least, I have some mini tomatoes that they're called Mini Bell tomatoes. They're cherry tomato. I got them from Baker Creek Seeds, and those again only get about a foot tall. And I want to say the last time I grew them, they had maybe 6 to 12 tomatoes per plant. So not huge yields, but it's nice to pick some fresh tomatoes inside when it's snowing outside. So I'm gonna plant up these tomatoes. There's, I don't know, 8 or 10 there. And then after I'm done planting all those up, I'll water everything in until water runs through the bottom of the pot. And then we'll let them grow, and we'll see it back when I gotta do some more transplanting or I have some fruit to harvest.